From being one of the worst superhero films to have ever been produced, to Gunn neglecting the movie because of Superman, here's why The Flash is officially the worst DC flop ever. Look folks, The Flash was released on June 15th, 2023. That means that it's been a while since it's been out, and well, the reviews are in, and they've told us one thing: this is the worst superhero movie ever. Ezra Miller's multiversal film was finally released after years of troubles, controversies, and delays. But before its release, it was one of the most hyped up movies of this year. It was called The Kind of Movie We Need Right Now, and one of the best Hollywood movies ever, by Tom Cruise and DC Studios head James Gunn. But despite that, it just hasn't done well. And after a disappointing opening weekend, the film's box office returns dropped a freaking 73% from the first week to the next. With a $220 million production budget, along with a $150 million promotional budget, it's most likely going to set Warner back by a whopping $200 million, which would be the biggest financial loss suffered by any studio because of a superhero film. Yikes! I know we all thought that the film would make history, and it did too, but just not the right kind. I mean, the movie earned $5.2 million in its third weekend in theaters. Even big-budget films that were released during the COVID-19 pandemic didn't do as bad. For instance, Wonder Woman 1984 lost more than $100 million, and Shazam further burned a $150 million hole in DC's wallet. All these massive losses bring us to one super important question. What does this mean for DC? You could say The Flash missed the mark for DC, but that would be a massive understatement. The movie has done irreparable damage to the superhero brand. Yeah, Warner had to release it at some point. After all, they'd been working on it since 2019, but it was more of a sunk cost situation, and they couldn't just cancel it. Though, putting money, especially on the promotional side, yeah, that was hella stupid. Considering all the controversies that the lead actor Ezra Miller was going through, it should have made sense that the movie wouldn't end up doing well. Right now, two more movies are going to be released from DC: Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So it's all gonna come down to how they end up doing at the box office. But truth be told, Warner's gonna suffer financially for a bit. The only hope that we've got right now is that at least one of these movies is somewhat decent. Otherwise, even the 2025 release of Superman Legacy would be ruined. And while everyone knows that The Flash did horribly, let's talk about why that happened. Starting with the biggest reason, Ezra Miller, it's no secret they've been surrounded by controversies for years now. In 2020, a video went viral in which Miller was choking a female fan outside a bar in Iceland, in the same place where the actor started a freaking cult too. Taking a look at all of that, fans asked for the actor to be removed from future projects. But Warner took Ezra's side, and the outrage went away. However, Miller was just getting started, because in 2021, the actor had more viral videos showing clashes with the cops, and was accused of grooming children and harassing women. In 2022, the actor went full crazy and had multiple clashes with the cops in Hawaii, and was charged with burglary in Vermont. Not just that, but Miller was also accused of housing a woman and her children in an extremely unsafe environment around guns and marijuana, and soon after that, a Boycott Miller campaign began on social media, where concerned folks urged moviegoers to not watch The Flash just because of Miller. Despite all of that, Warner carried on with the actor and released the movie. And, well, there's a lot of evidence that this was one of the reasons why this movie didn't do so well. The actor did issue public apologies and whatnot, but it barely seemed sincere. And on top of that, they blamed each and every problematic thing they ever did on poor mental health. But while this was the most obvious reason the movie flopped, there's more to it than Miller and their controversies. Take studio meddling for one. A Flash film was in the works since 2013, but it was finally released 10 years later. While the COVID-19 pandemic had a lot to do with the delays, let's not forget that the movie did suffer from studio meddling, just like any other DCEU movie. Zack Snyder started the DCEU with Man of Steel, and then he laid out the plan for the future. But after his Batman vs. Superman failed, Warner brought in Joss Whedon, and we all know what happened after that. Whedon's Justice League failed big time, and as damage control, Warner brought in Walter Hamada to clean up everything. But sadly, it led to a bigger mess than before. And now, finally, with James Gunn and Peter Safran steering the ship, the duo decided that the best way to go about it was to just reboot the entire thing. Under each new leader, the movie was redeveloped, and then Gunn and Safran just decided to not care, so they can focus on a new universe. In the end, what we have is a mess with a horrible story, horrible video effects, and a horrible actor. But this constant constant changing of the leaders brings me to the next reason why the movie flopped, and that's the fact that there's no Zack Snyder. You see, folks, despite his failures, fans still love him. He was a man with a plan, and even with failed movies, the Snyder Cut version did really well with fans. Fans aren't appreciative of the fact that we won't get to see a Snyderverse, and they're losing interest. If the guy had stayed in charge and Snyderverse happened, the movie would have done a lot better. I'm not saying it would have made billions, but it would have at least managed to break even. Cause ever since Zack left, everything's been a mess, to the point where the DCEU doesn't even matter anymore, which is another reason why this movie isn't doing so well. Gunn's decision to reboot the DCEU and replace it has harmed DC more than helping it. Starting with a clean slate can be an extremely good thing for new films, but it's horrible for movies that were already planned. The movies just aren't relevant anymore, and they won't matter afterward as well. On top of that, the entire Flashpoint storyline of The Flash means that the new movies can do anything, which just takes away from the previous storylines that fans actually appreciated. But the worst bit is, DC just can't be as good as Marvel. The multiverse isn't anything new. The Flash has been dealing with that since 1961, but DC was late in the game. Marvel introduced the multiverse in 2019, and then in 2021, the franchise used it to its full potential by casting the trio of Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire for Spider-Man No Way Home. I mean, all generations enjoyed that film because it was crazy good. Many fans even went twice for it, and that's exactly why it's the third highest grossing film. As always, DC tried to copy Marvel, but it failed. If it was first to the multiverse game, things might have been a little different, but now that fans are used to it, the movie just didn't stand out. Even then, some fans still think James Gunn can save the DCEU. But can he? This is a big job, and so far he's not doing it right. However, his track record's pretty solid. He's the reason Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad were such successes, so there's definitely still a chance he can save the franchise. But with the new captain at the helm, the direction is still quite vague. Yet, DC can still redeem itself, and Gunn can still prove he's useful with Superman. You see, folks, he's putting in everything he can for this film. Here's what he says about it. I completely relate to Superman because he's everything I am. He's somebody who is an outsider who feels like an alien, but also the ultimate insider because he's fucking Superman. And that's kind of like what I feel like. Yep, the guy's delusional enough to think he's Superman, but that also means he's going to do this project with a passion, and that it's not the type of project that's been meddled with in the past. In the time between the Guardians and the Suicide Squad, Gunn produced Brightburn. It's a dark film based on Superman's story, except if he was evil. And while this might have scared some fans into thinking his version of Clark Kent won't be nice, Gunn says that his Superman will be the kind of guy that you'd want to hug. So yeah, while The Flash didn't do well, and the next two movies aren't expected to do well either, all hope's not lost for DC, and hopefully it can redeem itself in the end. And there you have it, folks. From Gunn neglecting the movie because of Superman to being one of the worst superhero films to have ever been produced, this is why The Flash is officially the worst DC flop ever.